Hey guys, Tyler here. I hope you're doing well, and I'm so thankful for you tuning into this video. With this channel, we've been wanting to do a lot of different things, and one of the things I've wanted to do is to do videos about comics, about all the characters that we know and love, and just do some informative stuff. And with Spider-Man coming out, I thought it'd be cool to talk about the history of Spider-Man in film and why so many actors have played Spider-Man in such a short amount of time. We've had Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, Tom Holland. That's three actors playing Spider-Man since 2002. That's three actors in less than 2 decades. Moviegoers are coming to go see Spider-Man No Way Home with all these villains that span nearly 2 decades of films. So why have so many actors portrayed Spider-Man? Well, we're going to try to answer that through this video. So today we're living in what can be considered a golden age of comic book movies. Each year, multiple movies come out from DC and Marvel. They're the big blockbusters that everyone gets hyped about, makes hundreds of millions of dollars. People discuss them, they form theories on them. You can reference a joke from a Marvel movie and most people get what you're talking about. I'm a teacher, so I've told my students, hey, this is like the portal scene in Avengers, and they know what I'm talking about, so this is part of the culture. But rewinding a few decades, that wasn't always the case. Comic book movies being as popular as they are is more of a recent phenomenon. In the past, there was Christopher Reeves movies and the occasional TV movie or series. Tim Burton released his Batman film in 1989, and there were 3 follow-up films. In the 90s, there were other comic book adaptations like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Blade, Spawn, and The Crow, but nothing like we're used to today. So where was Marvel in all this? Well, there have been some attempts to bring Spider-Man to the silver screen. In the 80s, canon films almost brought Spidey to life. It would have featured Doc Ock as the antagonist. Tom Cruise was discussed for the role of Peter Parker, if you can imagine that. There were lots of rewrites and problems with the company, derailed the film, so that went away. Then in 1990, James Cameron was hired by Carloco Pictures to write, direct, and produce his own film. His would have been a more darker adaptation featuring more mature themes and even sexual content. Not sure how I feel about that with Spidey. But Leonardo DiCaprio would have played Parker and faced against Electro and Doc Ock. A complicated series of film rights disputes ensued, which we really don't have time to get into all that. But this resulted in the film not happening. So you might be wondering at this point, why did Marvel Studios just handle Spider-Man themselves? I mean, they make such awesome movies. They're awesome. Why don't they just make the movie? Well, that wasn't the case at the time. Marvel was facing bankruptcy in the 90s. The comic book industry had swelled due to speculation, and Marvel engaged in a bunch of gimmicky limited edition covers and all these holographic stuff and all these number ones. And if you ask anybody in comic book industry about the 90s, there's like a handful of really worthwhile books in the 90s in terms of price. But other than that, 90s was just full of all these books and this growing bubble. And finally that bubble popped and Marvel declared bankruptcy in 1996. So how would they recoup all the money they lost? How would they rebuild as a company? Sell the film rights. X-Men and Fantastic Four went to 20th Century Fox and Spider-Man went to Sony. It's a lot more complicated than that. There's more characters and more stipulations, but we're going to try to keep it as simple as possible for this video. So the first set of Spider-Man films were the Sam Raimi Trilogy starring Tobey Maguire. This is a Spider-Man a lot of people grew up with watching. Many people consider the first movie to be great and the second amazing. Spider-Man 2 is often considered one of the best comic book films, not just Spider-Man wise, but of all time. It's up there with The Dark Knight and The Watchmen. Spider-Man 3, with its slew of villains and emo Peter, it wasn't as great, but we're not here to dissect that. Spider-Man 4 was in development with the Vulture and Lizard featured as villains. Gwen Stacy and Black Cat would have made appearances, but frequent script writing's development problems led to Sony canceling it. Producer Avid Arad later explained, "We were working on what we called Spider-Man 4, and it was the same team as with the first 3 films. The problem was we didn't have a story that was strong enough and warranted another movie. And Sam Raimi realized we didn't have a good reason to make another one. And between him and Toby and obviously the studio, we all went into it not feeling good about the next story. So it didn't happen." As part of the original Marvel and Sony deal in 1999, Sony was required to make a Spidey film every 5 years. Well, now you have Spider-Man 4 not happening. Spider-Man 3 happened in 2007. You got this narrow window of time to make another film. Otherwise, the rights go back to Marvel. So Sony rebooted the series, this time with Mark Webb directing, Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man, and Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy. Webb was known for directing 500 Days of Summer and also having the most appropriate last name for somebody to direct a Spider-Man movie. His approach to the story would be more grounded, realistic, and emotional. while the fan community today is still divided on whether Andrew Garfield was a good Spider-Man, for me, I like him a lot, but I know there's a lot of division on that. Garfield is definitely one of the best actors to play Spider-Man. I mean, he's been nominated for so many awards since his time as Spider-Man, and he definitely brought that acting skill to the role. He really was an emotional Spider-Man. We saw that in lots of scenes. I mean, when you look at the death of Gwen Stacy, you can really see his love for the character. The first film featured the Lizard, while the second had Electro and a twisted Harry Osborn as Green Goblin. Now, with the MCU expanding in the background, you got the Avengers coming out, all these crossover films, Sony had plans to kind of do their own Spider-Man thing. There were plans for an Amazing Spider-Man 3, 4, and a separate Sinister Six movie. Emma Stone was even going to come back to be Gwen Stacy in a future film. However, in 2015, Marvel and Sony struck a deal that effectively canceled the Amazing Spider-Man franchise. In 2016, Garfield described himself as being heartbroken by his experience working on the franchise. Now, looking back at Marvel's history, Spider-Man is the Marvel character. Sure, with all the movies, people know characters nowadays, but if you ask somebody 20 years ago who's Thor or who's Doctor Strange or the Guardians of the Galaxy, people don't know who you're talking about. But if you ask people around the world, hey, name a Marvel character, they'd probably tell you Spider-Man. So with the success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it made sense to try to incorporate Spider-Man into the web of interconnected movies. So the 2015 deal would recast Spider-Man, have him first appear in Captain America Civil War, allow him to be in other MCU movies, and then have his own new trilogy of films. Sony would continue to finance, distribute, own, and have final creative control of the Spider-Man films. You can still see Spider-Man interact with your favorite MCU characters, but the film rights are still Sony's. It's why when you go see No Way Home this winter, the film says in association with Marvel Studios. Sony still, at the end of the day, owns Spider-Man, the film rights, that is. The Holland films so far have featured Vulture and Mysterio as villains, despite a brief hiccup in 2019 where it looked like Sony and Marvel would maybe get a divorce and Spider-Man could no longer play with the MCU characters. Despite that one hiccup, it's been pretty successful for both the companies. Both Marvel and Sony have enjoyed success from this new arrangement. So that's the complicated history of Spider-Man in film. It's been pretty rocky, not gonna lie. You've had 3 actors portray Spider-Man in the span of 20 years. But the plus is that we've gotten to see so many iconic aspects of Spider-Man. Whether it's Dafoe's psychotic Green Goblin, the train scene in Spider-Man 2, the death of Gwen Stacy, or comic-accurate teenage Spider-Man, we've been pretty lucky as fans. And I know there's lots of debate about who is the best Spider-Man, but I gotta say, I've got favorites, we've got moments we all love, but we've seen so much cool stuff with all these movies. I mean, we are truly lucky as fans to have the 3 series of films that we've had. And this winter's No Way Home, it features the Green Goblin, Doc Ock, Sandman, Lizard, and Electro, all played by their original actors. And that's not spoilers, that's in the trailer. I don't want to spoil anything for the movie. It's a special film. But you got these villains all interacting with the current Holland characters. I mean, it is so cool. And having seen the movie, I just got to say, it is a love letter to Spider-Man fans and all 3 interpretations of the character. So I hope you guys enjoy the movie just as much as I did, and I hope you found this video informational and entertaining. So until the next time we make another video like this, I hope you enjoyed it. Keep following us, and until next time, keep on chasing those collectibles.